Hi, I'm Willie with H5 Technology. Welcome to my channel. Thank you for being here, and I appreciate each and every one of you. You voted, and everybody wanted to see a switch set up with an edge router and a particular VLAN being the only connection out to PIA, Private Internet Access. So we are going to set that up in this video. Real quick before we get started, I made a little change to my audio, and I want to let me know, does the audio sound better in this video? I would appreciate the heads up on that. Let's hop into it here. Actually, before we get too far, let's talk about actually what we're going to be using in this video. So we've got our mesh AP, and I'll show you why I'm going to use this particular access point here in just a second. So we are going to use the Ubiquiti mesh. This is actually going out in the workshop, but we're going to use it in this example. The other device that we are going to use, check this out, is the new EdgeSwitch 10 XP. So we have passive PoE on these ports. It's got 2 SFPs. I will do a full review on this video, or on this switch, when these are released in the to the general public. So it probably shouldn't be too much longer, I would imagine. It's a pretty slick product. If you got in on it during beta, good for you. I really like this switch. So we're going to do a couple things. We're going to set up this switch, we're going to set up a VLAN, and then we're going to change private internet access to only go over that VLAN. So real quick, the physical layout, my PC is plugged into ETH2 on the router back here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go from ETH2 on the router to, we'll just go to 1. This is just simple. I know I could do SFP to SFP, but then we get into a whole conversation about what SFPs I'm using and what cable I'm using, and that's not what this video is about. If you want to see a video about that, let me know down in the comments, and I will create a video about SFPs, about fiber, the different types, connectors, things like that. This video is specifically about creating switch ports that work on a certain VLAN that only go out to private internet access, and also using an access point that has an SSID that gets me on the local network, and one that gets me out to private internet access. So that's what we're going to do. So I'm going to get this guy plugged in, and then we'll get going here. So I'm going to get it plugged in, and I'll be right back. So the switch is still booting, but it's right here, and number 1 is going up here to the router, and then number 2 goes to my PC. So let's take a look at the setup here. Alright, so we are logged into the edge router that we have been using through the private internet access. This is the same EdgeRouter 4. It's the one I introduced you to a couple weeks ago. Then we did the PIA, and now we are going to set up these VLANs. So we're logged in, and we're plugged into ETH2. So what we're going to do is we're going to add an interface. We're going to create a VLAN. We're just going to keep this very simple. It's going to be VLAN 2, and we're going to hang that off of ETH2, which is where we are plugged in. This is going to be PIA only, and we're going to manually define the address, and I'm going to take this, and so that there's no confusion about the IP addressing when I'm looking at it, I'm going to do something like 10.1.1.1, and we'll do a full class C. So there's our VLAN right here. It's been created on ETH2. It's got the VLAN tag, VLAN of number 2. The layer 3 address here is 10.1.1.1. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go over to services, and we're going to create a new dhcp server. We're going to call it PIA only, and it's going to be, oh, yep, I keep forgetting every time I put a space there. So we're going to do 10.1.1.0/24, and we're going to start our IPs at 100, and we're going to stop them at 110. There's what the heck? 254. 10.1.1.1, and then we're going to leave the router as our DNS server there. There won't be any unified devices directly on this network, so I'm going to leave the unified controller blank. We're going to save that. We're going to hop over here to DNS. We've already got ETH2, but we've got a VLAN, so we actually have to add another listen interface and add that layer 3 interface. And don't click apply down here, click save here. That sometimes will trip people up. This is down here. These are applying to the dynamic DNS, and I've run into that myself. So just a word of the wise, anything with DNS forwarding, click the save up here. So this should be all set up. Now, what we're going to do, like I said, I'm not going to get too far into this edge switch because it's not generally available. It's still in beta, so I can't do an in-depth review on it, but I am going to use it because I had it handy and it can do VLANs. One really important thing that I wanted to tell you is that the reason that I'm using the mesh, and I guess I could have used a UAP AC Lite as well, but the reason that I'm using the mesh is because this will take 24-volt passive as well as standard AFAT, and the edge switch only does passive PoE out. And that's okay. That's okay. We're going to get logged into this guy. And if you're familiar with the new EdgeSwitch operating system, if you're not, you should be. And that's the first thing. You should be going out, checking this out. There's a lot of important features and updates and things like that that you really need to be checking out. You need to be staying up to date with this. So go out there and grab it. The switch simply grabbed a DHCP address, and I found that over here. I went into services, net2. You can see we've leased 2 IPs. I went in here, I went view leases, and then boom, right there. So you can see here's my PC that's plugged in, and here's the switch. I could set that static if I choose to. Normally, when I'm setting up a network, any infrastructure devices are going to get a static IP. This is your home. This is how you want to do it. In this video, I'm not going to set a static IP at this point. I've got so few devices that I'm not going to worry about it at this point. I actually just talked about that longer than it would have taken me to set a static IP. So, all right, so we're over here at the edge switch, and we're going to go over here to the VLANs, and here we're going to say add a new VLAN. Is VLAN ID number 2. We're going to come over here. I'm going to click on the VLAN name, and I'm going to say PIA only. And I don't know if it's going to let me have a space in there or not. Sure is. All right, so it's very important when we're doing VLANs across devices that we allow that VLAN through our trunk ports or through our ports that are connecting the devices. So we know we're using port number 1 to connect to the router. So we want to tag VLAN 2, and we want VLAN 1 to be the untagged VLAN there. We could do some things with that, but this is how we want it for this example. Now, I am plugged into port number 2 with my machine, so I want to stay on the 172.16.29, so I'm going to stay untagged. Then what we're going to do is port number 3, that's where we're going to plug in the access point and configure it. So what we're going to do is we're going to tag it there because we need both VLANs represented on that port, and that's what this does. Essentially creates a trunk port, right? But we're doing it manually. I could come up here and click the box. I don't know why I'm not a fan of that. I just can't. I don't know. So then what we're going to do is we're going to say that ports 7 and 8 are going to be hardwired ports for private internet access only. So what we're going to do is we are going to exempt the untagged VLAN from that port, and we are going to set the untagged or the default VLAN for that port to be PIA only. So now we're going to go ahead and we're going to apply those settings. Once that's done, now we can move on to configuring the access point, and we can also configure our router. First thing, let's go over to our ports, and remember what port we said we were going to use for the access point. That's going to be port number 3. So we're going to come back over here, and actually, I'm going to, you know what, I love labels. So this is going to be your router uplink. Port number 2 is going to be Willie PC untag. Or no, I don't like that untag there. Let's call this Willie PC default. Port number 3 is going to be our access point. And then what we're going to do is on the PoE, we're going to drop it down. We're going to hit 24 volt passive. Now what you see is we got the little lightning bolt, the little power indicator. And if you look at the switch physically, it has kicked on the LED for that. So that is perfect. So now what I'm going to do, I'm going to take the access point, I'm going to take the panel off, I'm going to find an Ethernet cable around here, and we're going to plug this guy in, and I will be right back. So for those of you who thought I may have been trolling you, or this was a game of chicken about the 24 volt passive PoE, I don't know if you can see it or not. Maybe not. Let me turn the light off. Let me turn another light off. Still can't see it real well, but I promise you that that light is on. Maybe you can see it back here. Anyway, this is powered by the switch. It's got a white light, so it is ready for adoption. That's why you can't really see it. So I'm going to, first of all, we're going to adopt this into our controller. And then we are going to, that's my smart light, which we're going to get to, by the way. But we are going to adopt this into our controller. We're going to set up private internet access, and then we're going to move over to the router, and we're going to reconfigure the router. So give me just a minute, and we'll be right back. All right, so we are logged into our Unify controller. This is a default testing site here, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a new site, and I'm going to call this PIA only. I'm going to submit that. We're going to come over here. You can see there's no devices. We're going to come down to settings. We're going to go to wireless networks. We're going to create a wireless network, and we're going to call this H5 Lab No PIA. We're going to make this security key something that is difficult to guess, but easy for me to remember. So we'll just do like let me in 18 bang bang. And you can see that. I don't care. This is not going to be on all the time. We're going to go ahead and save that. Then what we're going to do is we're going to... Now, it's very important to note that in Unify, unless we are using Unify switches and the Unify gateway, that we don't need to tell Unify, besides on the SSID, we don't need to tell it about the VLAN. So we're not even going to go into networks or set any of that stuff up, because the only thing that's going to be on here is this access point. So the only thing that matters as far as VLANs go is going to be the VLAN attached to this next SSID. So here we go. We're going to do H5 Lab PIA. We're going to do WPA personal, and we're going to say let me in 20 bang bang. And we're going to go ahead and save that. Now, what I didn't do was I didn't set the VLAN. And if I don't set the VLAN, we're going to go through this whole video wondering why nothing ever works properly. So I'm going to go back in here. I'm going to go to Advanced. I'm going to go to Use VLAN. I'm going to say Use VLAN 2. So what that's going to do is anytime anybody connects to Lab PIA, it's going to tag those packets with VLAN 2. The switch in turn is going to tag those to the router. The router is going to know which network to put it in. It's not magic. Well, if you don't understand it, I guess it might look like magic, but what it is it's proper networking, proper VLANs, things like that. So I call it automagic, because when you set it up properly, it just works. You don't have to tweak it or anything like that. So let's use the word automagic instead of magic. Although I did have somebody call me a wizard yesterday. Maybe I should get a wizard hat to go with the beard that I'm growing. All right, so back to business here. Real quick, let's go back over to our EdgeRouter. Let's refresh this dhcp pool. We should have an access point, yep, that has grabbed an IP. So it looks like our access point has grabbed 29.5. So we're going to do this the old-fashioned hard way, and we're going to SSH in, you know, back before the days of the discovery tool. I'm just joking. This is not the hard way. I use this way consistently, by the way. Consistently. So that's going to be 172.16.29.5 is, and of course our default login is UBNT. We're going to do a set inform. We're going to take it over to our controller. Now this is not best practice. I should be using an FQDN here, a fully qualified domain name. This is just for example, so this part is not set to some of those other best practices. We could totally do that. The lab right now is not set up for that DNS resolution to happen properly. The lab gets churned often. I'm doing work for people. We're doing setups. We're doing remote setups. We're doing testing, and the lab gets churned often. So sometimes these services are not available when I can record the video. So what we're going to do is we're going to set that inform. We're going to hit enter. So now there's an adoption request sitting out here. Boom. There's the access point. So here's the important part, and sometimes the thing that trips people up. We're going to go ahead and we're going to click adopt on this. Then we're going to come back over here and we're going to hit that up arrow, and we're going to set that inform twice. Very important to do that. So you can see we're adopting here. As soon as we're adopted, we'll give this device, I like to give my devices names that make sense when I look at it, common sense names, like this is going to be, you know, mesh office, you know, mesh lab office. So I know what it is, where it's at. Your mileage may vary on the naming scheme or the nomenclature that you use. Use something that makes sense to you. So we're still adopting, and you know that I get super duper impatient. You know that. So it says it's adopting. I've got a blue light. I don't know what's going on here. Interesting. Do I need to do that? Do I need to do that inform again? Yeah, did the inform again. Had to do it 3 times that time. That was strange. So now we do have. You can't see it, the lighting. I got to fix the lighting in here. I bought this stuff to fix the lighting. Lighting's coming next, audio upgrade, all that good stuff. So we are provisioning. So I'm going to let this guy provision, and we'll be right back. All right, so our AP's being a little bit of a sleepyhead, just came back online. Looks like possibly stun error there, which should go away. But what I want to do is I want to come over here, and I want to give this thing a good name. So we're going to say lab mesh PIA, and we'll go ahead and just save that, and we're just going to leave everything else default. If you've worked with me or you've done this before, you know you will have tweaked your radios and everything. Looks like we're doing a reprovisioning here real quick. Looks like we do need a software update, so I am going to, once this provisioning is done, I'm going to go ahead and upgrade this and then let it upgrade while we reconfigure the EdgeRouter. So I'm going to wait for this provision to stop, and we'll be right back. All right, so we have started the upgrade process, and we're quite a few versions behind. So we're going to go ahead, let it do its thing, and it's going pretty quick. And we are going to hop over to our EdgeRouter. And we are actually going to SSH into the EdgeRouter as we did before, and we're going to change all these settings through the command line. You know, there are several things that we have to change, and so let's just do a show configuration, and we're going to start from the top again, right? So what we're going to do, let's do this. Let's go back over to our dashboard. we'll bring up our interfaces. My memory is not quite what it used to be, so when you're working with me, you know that I write all sorts of stuff down these days because, like I said, my memory's not as good as it used to be, and I got a lot of stuff jumbling around in here. Alright, so here's the first thing we need to do is we need to change this 172.16.29 right there. We are going to have to change that firewall over to our 10.1.1.0. So we're going to go to Configure. We're going to set firewall, modify PIA, and what we're going to do, we'll bring this over here. It's going to be rule 10, and the source address is going to be 10.1.1.0/24. And we will delete firewall, modify PIA. I can't remember from the last video if we had to do this or not, so we're just going to do it just in case. Yep, doesn't. So it went ahead and it overwrote it. So now what we're going to do is we'll go ahead and save that. We'll just save incrementally along the line. That'll piss off everybody who doesn't like to save their configs. Let's see here. So we did that one. So that one's changed. Now we're going to go down. Let's see here. Next thing we're going to do is we're probably going to deal with this interface here. So what we're going to do is we're going to do a configure, and we are going to do a set interface Ethernet 2 VIF 2 firewall and modify PIA route. Then what we're going to do is we're going to do a delete interfaces Ethernet ETH2 firewall. Yeah, we're just going to take that whole line out of there. Save that. Save early, save often. Alright, so let's go back down here. Like I know I could use the shortcuts, but I like looking at the config. It just gets me semi-familiar and keeps my mind going about where things are at here. So ETH0, there's ETH1, there's ETH2. So we got rid of the firewall there. We applied it to VLAN 2. That's beautiful. Okay, that all looks good. What else do we need to do here? Got our... There's our PIA only. Let's see. Okay. Got to change the NAT rules. Got to change our NAT rules here. Let's see what we've got going on here. So we're going to do this. We're going to do configure. And we're going to set. This should be under services. Set service. Set service NAT rule 5000. Source address is going to be 10.1.1.0/24. Now, do we have to delete? Do we have to delete the other one? I'm glad you're on this journey with me. 72.16.29. 29. Okay, so it totally takes care of that for us. So now what we need to do is we need to change rule 5001. Source address. Beautiful. We'll commit that. We'll save it. Alright, let's do a show configuration one more time just to cover our bases. Just go along with me here. Only had 1 cup of coffee today. Actually, I'm down to 1 cup a day, which is it's amazing. Alright, so let's see. ETH0, ETH, that all looks good. That all looks good. Everything here is looking beautiful, great, grand, awesome. DHCP is working. That all looks great. That all looks fantastic. 1.0. Okay. So this all looks pretty good at this point. So what we're going to do is we're just going to minimize this. We'll refresh this. All right. I'm going to bring up fast.com. We're going to run a speed test. We're going to enable the VPN. We'll run the speed test again to make sure it is not impacting this. Then what we're going to do is we're going to move my PC over to one of those other ports, and we'll run the speed test again. All right, so I'm over at fast.com. We're running the speed test. You can see we're cruising along at a pretty good speed this morning. Probably going to keep climbing, keep going for us here, but it's safe to say that we're hitting 700 megabits. No issues. At least 600 megabits, no issues. So we're at 690 this morning. Probably several contributing factors to that. But what we're going to do is we're going to run over here to our EdgeRouter. And we're going to enable this little beauty, this little PIA tunnel here. And if we get an IP address over here, it means we did something right. And that the tunnel should come up. So it still says to be determined. Boom! There's the tunnel. All right. So if we rerun this speed test and we get awesome speeds, we know that our configuration works 50%. So we're going to hit the redo button on fast.com and see what happens here. All right, so I paused the video for a second because I got this big old fat 0 right here, right? So I got to thinking, I bet there's a problem. There's a problem with my NAT. And so what I need to do is I actually need to move, I need to change some things because the way the rules are set up, my packets are hitting the firewall and the firewall is going, discard, discard, discard. So what I need to do is I need to actually set up a masquerade rule for the 172.16.29, and I need to move it to the top. So actually what I'm going to do here is I'm going to configure this, and you could do this several different ways. So I know a lot of you may say, well, you could do it this way, but this is the way that we're going to do it. I'm just going to specify the source network, right? Okay, I'm going to specify the source as the 172.16.29.0. And I'm going to take this dude and I'm going to move him to the top because I want it to process first. Okay? So now if I refresh this. Alright, so what I actually had to do was, besides modifying NAT just to make myself feel good, was I actually had to set up a little bit of policy-based routing. So before we get into that, I'm going to move my PC over to the PIA. You can see now that PIA is connected and my speed test is running. And running at a fairly decent clip. Not 100% sure. That PBR seems to possibly have slowed the internet connection down just a little bit. But let's see what we'll see what happens here. You know, people are waking up right now. There could be all kinds of things going on here, but the PBR probably does have a little bit to do with it. But it is working, I believe. Yeah, see, speed's climbing, so it's not all the router. But we're going to hop over here, and we're going to look what I want to look at. Well, it's not going to matter because I'm going to get a different IP, but you can see that we are masquerading here. And we'll refresh the router and see. But let me move this port real quick. So my PC is now just plugged into one of the PIA ports. So I'm going to bring up the router on that interface. All right, we released and renewed our IP address, and you can see we are now on that 10.1.1.0 network. And if we hop over here to firewall NAT and pull up the NAT, you can see now that the NAT is working for our PIA. So let's go over here to our speed test, hit refresh on the speed test. And looks like we're still at that 20 to 30 megabits, but traffic from that VLAN is going out over PIA. So it does work. It works. So let's get into the mechanics behind the scenes of what we had to do. Let me pull this up. And we'll restart this. Alright, so we had to do a couple things here. So we changed our NAT, which was good, but then what we did was we created another firewall rule set called PBR. And we gave it two rules. And if you remember in the video when we set up PIA, we created table 1. Let me show you that, just so you've got your reference here. So we're going to go down to where we created that. So right here, we created under this routing table. So this is routing table 1. And this is what takes all of the traffic and forces it over the VTUN 0 interface, which is our PIA interface. So then what I had to do was create a table 2 and force everything out of the internet connection going, our default route out to the internet. So this is an interface route, and this is a route that is pointing to an IP instead of an interface. So then, what we did, I'm trying to explain this kind of in order so it makes sense. So then, now this is policy-based routing, which is different than what we did for the PIA. All right, so what we did was we created a firewall rule set called PBR, and table 2 is our LAN, and we specified the source address of 172.16.29.0, which is our default LAN. That's why I called this LAN. We want all that traffic to go one place, and we want all of the traffic from PIA to go somewhere else. So, and we're going to modify route table 2 is what this means. We are modifying routing table 2. Now, rule 30, I just gave that the description of PIA, and we're modifying table 1. Remember, we already had table 1 created when we created our PIA configuration. So what I did was I said that the source address here is 10.1.1.0/24. So any of that traffic is just going to go out of PIA because we're modifying routing table 1. Now, if you scroll down and you look at our interfaces, what I did then was just on regular ETH2 was I applied the firewall in rule of the modify PBR so that the default route would go out of the default route instead of going, or the internet traffic would go out of our default route instead of going over PIA. Now if you look at Virtual Interface 2, VLAN 2, we're applying that same modify PBR so that everything goes out of OpenVPN. If this is confusing, let me know, and maybe we can look at the mechanics of that. But this is simply all I had to do. Now, what I'm going to do, I'm going to sanitize this configuration. I'm going to post a link to this configuration so that you can take a look at this yourself. And what I will do is I will create a user UBNT, and that's how you can get in. But I will post, actually probably what I will do is post, I'll probably post the text of this so that you can take a look at that. But it does work. And so, all right, so here is what we're going to do is I have my phone right here. So I'm going to log in to my phone, and I am going to bring up the Wi-Fi settings. So right here you can see that I'm connected currently to FBI VAN, which is my main I don't know if I can get this to focus any better. Anyway, so then we see the H5 Lab no PIA, and we see the H5 Lab PIA. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to connect to the H5 Lab no PIA. So that was let me in 18 exclamation. And it always helps when you put the password in correctly. So remember that. Try that again. Connecting, we are authenticating. So it also helps when you connect to the correct network. So right now I am connected to the lab no PIA. So now what we're going to do is we're going to bring up, let's see, do I have the speed test on here? Let's see. I think I can do it through a web browser. Fast.com, not phaser, fast.com. Alright, so I am now running a speed test. Now this is from my phone. The antenna is laying in a really weird position over here. Wi-Fi is not optimal right now, but you can see that I'm getting the 62 megabits per second connected to that network. So now what I'm going to do is I am going to I'm going to connect to the PIA network, and we'll get connected here. So we are obtaining an IP address, and now we are connected to the lab PIA. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to bring up that speed test again, and you're going to see, oh, my speed test, what'd that say? Could not reach our servers. You may not be connected to the internet. Let's see here. So I can bring up Google, but the fast speed test does not like for some reason running it on my phone, over the VPN. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring up the Private Internet Access web page to show you that we are indeed connected over our phone. I don't know if I can get this thing to focus any better there, but it tells us our IP address and our ISP, and that we are indeed protected by PIA. So it works. It absolutely does work. I will post that configuration so that you can take a look at this. You can analyze what we did there and replicate this yourself. So I know this is a little bit of a longer video, but everybody wanted to see this, so I felt it was worth the time to do it. We've still got a lot of good videos coming, a lot of good videos. So if you like this video, please give me a thumbs up, please subscribe, please comment and share, please follow me on Twitter and Instagram. If you want to talk to us on Discord, the link's down there. Charlie will always be around. If you got any questions, he's our admin. He does a fantastic job. If we started a BBS, the old days where you telneted in and you played games and things like that, would you be interested in that? Let me know in the comments if you'd be interested, because I still legally own the software to do that, and I thought about maybe putting that back up as well. If you want to buy any of the gear that you see here on the channel, that Amazon affiliate link is down below. If you need IT consulting, voice over IP, networking, wireless, whether it's standard Wi-Fi, whether it's point-to-point, things like that, you can go to h5llc.com, fill that contact form out, and somebody will get a hold of you as soon as possible. Once again, thank you very much for being here. I do appreciate each and every one of you, and we'll see you in the next video.